All right, welcome to the official review, episode 7. Back in the saddle, second straight episode. Today we're going to be going over NBA All-Star selections, our current MVPs at this point of the season, our favorite storylines or our favorite part of the season so far. Going over the Utah Jazz and their crazy record so far, and then end of the episode, we'll be going over kind of a depressing stat. So let's kick things off with our all-star selections. We'll start out East. Who's your first guard in the East?
I'm going to go with Trae Young on this one. He's going to be the point guard for the team. I think he's been having a great year this year. I mean, the Hawks, they haven't been the greatest team. They got some new pieces that they're trying to figure out, but he's kind of proven that he's not an empty stat player. He's been great this year. I just couldn't find anyone else that I thought. I didn't think Kyrie. I don't think Westbrook deserved it more. Like I didn't think even Ben Simmons deserved it. So I think he's really just the best, at least, point guard in the East right now.
Okay. For my first guard, I had Bradley Beal. He's been on an absolute tear this season, putting up 40-point game after 40-point game. Put him in the All-Star game. He got snubbed last year, and he's just been going through hell this season on the Wizards. He's my first guard. For my second guard, I've got none other than Jaylen Brown of the Boston Celtics. Easily a most improved player candidate this year. He has stepped up his game tremendously. The Celtics have kind of hit a little bit of a slump at this point of the season. They've lost like 8 of their last like 10 or something. So hopefully they can bounce back, but he's definitely had a all-star season thus far.
Yeah. I also had Bradley Beal. I had Bradley Beal as my shooting guard. He's been awesome for the Wizards. He's the Wizards suck, and Westbrook isn't really helping him, but he's been the best player. He's gotten a couple monster games where he's got like over 50 points in losing efforts, unfortunately. But yeah, he's great, even though he's on a bad team. And then for my small forward, I had Kevin Durant, who's on the Nets. He's had a great season. He's been I thought he might be more of a catch and shoot guy after his injury, but he's proven that he's exactly what he was before he got injured. And I think that's awesome for the Nets. And he's just going to get better from here, I'm sure.
Yep, I've got Durant at the 3 too. Crazy bounce back season. I mean, it's like nothing has like changed, and he went through like the worst injury in sports, and he's still the same player. It's absurd, and he's been having somewhat of an MVP candidate season. He's obviously missed a lot of games to like some COVID stuff, and then obviously they're just being extra careful with any sort of leg injury. But yeah, Durant easily an all-star starter. For my 4 spot, I got Giannis. I mean, not much to be said there. He's putting up numbers, teams winning games, and the fan favorite, so he's obviously going to get a ton of fan votes. And then at my center, I've got Embiid, who's had an MVP season, leading the Sixers to first place in the East right now. He's been on a rip this season too, and I think that Eastern Conference front courts. I mean, it's pretty easy to put together those 3 guys. It's easy to run Giannis and Embiid.
Yeah, I had the exact same front court as you. Antetokounmpo. He's like you said, there's not much to be said. He's still dominant for that Bucks team. They're not as good as they were last year. I think they still got some things to figure out. I think they're on paper they're better, but the record-wise they haven't been as good. But he's gonna figure it out, and he's still awesome. And then Joel Embiid, he's just been awesome. I mean, I've watched pretty much every Sixers game, and he's just always out. Like, he always has the problems with the back-to-backs and stuff, but he's been better with it this year. He's only missed a couple games, and the games that he hasn't been in, they've like lost like to bad teams without him. And they were undefeated until yesterday, I think, where they lost to the Suns with him. That was the first game without him that they lost. I mean, with him that they lost. So that kind of just goes to show you that they're like 13-1 with Embiid in the lineup. That just shows how much he means to them. And without him, they're like 4-5 or 4-6, I think, is what they are without him. So it just kind of goes to show you how valuable he is. And he's been dropping like a solid 35 and 11 every game. Which is awesome.
Yep, yeah. So I think really the only controversy with the East is who the guards are. I mean, you've got so many
Yeah.
guys there like Trey Young, Brad Beal, Jaylen Brown, and then Kyrie and Harden are obviously just big names that are obviously going to be in the conversation. Moving it out west, at the one I've got Curry. Curry's also been having an absurd comeback season. Um, yeah, I mean he's the way he's like been able to elevate all of the Warriors and like guys like Wiggins and Kelly Oubre this year, like they're all getting better looks just because you have to pay so much attention to Curry because he can shoot from anywhere. And I mean, like even Draymond Green looks so much better with Curry out there, just like the impact he's had. And then my other guard, I gave the nod to Donovan Mitchell over Lillard just because of how dominant the Jazz have been, with a I think 20-5 record at this point. I mean, leading the West. They always are a pretty good regular season team, but I mean the way they've come out the gate this year is like insane.
Yeah. For my backcourt for the West, I have Steph Curry, obviously, and then Damian Lillard. Damian Lillard, I think he's just super consistent. He's a super consistent player. He's always you can always just write him down for having 25 points a game, which is it's just awesome to have. And he's elevated that team pretty well. They've beaten some good teams. I think they're in the playoffs as of now. I think they're barely in the playoffs, but he's really been elevating that team. That team has no business really. If without him, they would not be in the playoffs without him. But he's been very good, and then obviously Curry. Same goes for him. I mean, they're not in the playoffs, but I think without Curry, they'd probably be looking at the first overall pick again this year. And he's just means so much for that team. And I'm sure once they get Klay Thompson back and they kind of get more chemistry going with their new guys like Wiggins and Oubre and Wiseman, I think that they're going to be right back where they were a couple years ago next year.
Yeah, obviously Curry's got to be in there, and then yeah, Lillard's a dog. He's been consistent every year, just carrying the Trailblazers. And I mean, even
Yeah.
CJ before he got injured, he was having a crazy start to the season.
Yeah.
West, my front court. I don't think this is much of a debate. Obviously, LeBron's gonna be there no matter what, even if LeBron like sucks, he's gonna be a like when he's like 40 something, he's gonna be a all-star starter. I mean, he's
Yeah.
been the face of the league
It's a good
for
given.
almost 20 years. Um, and then I've got Kawhi, who's been actually playing games this year, which is like crazy, and he's definitely an MVP candidate as well. I mean, everyone's an MVP candidate, I guess, but all these guys. But Kawhi's been having a crazy season, and then center, you have to have the Joker. He's the best center in the West, arguably the league.
Yeah. For mine, I have I have LeBron. Obviously, he's going to be a given. There's not really much to be said there. He's still a great player. He's in the MVP conversation. And then I got Zion at the 4. He's not in a big market at all, but he's really having an underrated season. He's just not in a big market, but every game, he's just been dominant. Like he's been getting, like he's like on 65% efficiency, which I mean is a given based on how many dunks and stuff he does. But he's really dominant, and he's been actually staying healthy too, which is actually really good. A good sign because the injuries were always in question with him. If his size was going to be too much to carry on his body. in the long run. But he's been having a great year. And then at the center, I have Jokic, obviously, who, yeah, him and Embiid are the top two centers in the league. You can argue who's better. He's a great playmaker. He's been making. I mean, the Nuggets, they haven't been having as great of a season as they had hoped. But I think they'll definitely turn it around. And Jokic has been really good, especially with passing the ball and shooting the three and stuff like that. He hasn't really regressed at all from last year. It's just the team around him that's kind of been worse, like Jamal Murray.
Yeah, Jamal
So
Murray's not quite looked like he did in the bubble there.
yeah. I don't think he really had the motivation. He didn't have as much motivation as he did in the bubble, but
Uh,
but yeah,
yeah, I
yeah. So
honestly like to your point about Zion too. It's like crazy how we went from being like everyone was like, "Oh my God, stop hyping him up. He's like way too overhyped." Like almost over like 3 months, like from being like the most hyped like player maybe in the NBA and overrated almost at times to literally like nobody talking about him at all. It's like kind of
yeah,
crazy, honestly.
yeah,
Um, so I guess we'll move on to some of our like sleepers who are like kind of like borderline all stars, but we think are definitely worthy. Um, I'll start it off with Colin Sexton in Cleveland, who's been another guy in the East, another guard who's definitely making a case for most improved. It's tough just because of like their record and just like they haven't been the best team, but I mean, right after that game against, or both games against the Nets, where he literally just took over games and ruined the opening night of the Nets' big three. Like, I don't know, he's definitely made a case to be one of the best guards in the East. So I think he's definitely a sleeper out East. And then in the West, I have De'Aaron Fox on the Kings, who kind of fighting for a playoff spot this year. Um,
yeah. They are. They're in like the 10th seed, I think, or ninth
yeah,
seed.
so they might make their way into that little play-in tournament.
Yep.
Yeah, Fox is a guy who's crazy underrated. Uh, I mean, mostly due to the fact that he's playing in Sacramento, but the Kings are a team I honestly like really like to watch with him, Halliburton, and Buddy Hield. That whole team's just fun to watch. And then another guy, Christian Wood, who just came out the gate, uh, showed why he's worth that big contract he got in Houston. He's injured, so I don't think he'll make the team, but he's definitely a candidate for that All-Star spot when he was healthy.
Yeah, for sure. For mine, my list starts with Tobias Harris from the Sixers. He's been averaging 20 points per game and I think 7 rebounds and like 4 assists, which is a good stat line. But he's been really good complementary player to Embiid and Simmons. He's been shooting a lot better. He's been having better games, better on defense too. Last year, you're really concerned that like that contract might be the worst in the league because they gave him a super max or like a max contract for 4 years, like 36 million per year. That was not a good contract. I think when they signed it, they were just kind of desperate not to lose both Jimmy Butler and Tobias Harris when they acquired at the trade deadline when they were going for it that year. But he's actually really good this year, and I'm really impressed with the improvements he's shown, and he's kind of gone back. Doc Rivers was his coach in LA when he had his best season there when he actually got snubbed from the All Star game. But he's never made an All Star game up to this point. I think this year he might get in on the bench. Hopefully he'll be a bench player. But I think with Doc Rivers, it's kind of just revitalized. He likes guys system. He drives that system. It's revitalized his career, and he's making not looking like a big horrible contract, like guy just didn't live up to his contract type of deal. And then second on my list, I have De'Aaron Fox. Yeah, just like Andre said, I mean he's been doing the most to kind of keep the Kings afloat there, especially with how poorly Bagley's been playing and guys like that. I mean, they've kind of still probably make the playoff play-in tournament, maybe even sneak into the actual playoffs if they can impress there and Fox can carry him. But he's been having a good year. And then my third sleeper is going to be Julius Randle on the New York Knicks, who has been their best player, and they've been running the offense through him. He's kind of been playing like the center. He's been playing power forward. He's smaller. He's like 6'6", 6'7". But he's been like dunking the basketball well. They've been giving it to him. They've been running the offense through him. I mean, not the bet. You don't want to be doing that really on a good team. It's never going to be a good team when Julius Randle's your first option. But he's been like very consistent. I mean, on the Pelicans and stuff, he was always just a solid player, and he's just been and they've just been running the offense for him, so that's kind of been inflating his stats a little bit. But I think if he was a third option or fourth option on the team, I think that's a NBA title contending team there. But I think he hopefully he should get in on one of the bench spots because he's really been playing well for the Knicks.
Yeah, I mean, he's got them in the playoffs as of right now, so that's impressive,
It is, yeah,
especially for the Knicks.
Yeah.
So from here, we'll just move into who we each have as our MVP thus far in the season. For me, I've got Steph just from like the way he took the Warriors from being like, I mean, at the beginning of the season, the way the Warriors were playing like last year was insane. I mean, they'd be down by like 50 in like the third quarter, and you're like, is this even a real NBA score? Like he took them from I think worst team in the NBA or second worst team in the NBA all the way up to being in the playoffs as of right now. I mean, if you look at their roster compared to like the roster of like the teams that were winning championships in the Bay, I mean, it's such a bad roster, and the way he's just been able to kind of keep them afloat and been putting up crazy numbers. It's just been fun to watch. And part of my reasoning is just because I don't want LeBron to win MVP. Not a big LeBron guy, but I think you can also just say that LeBron can win it every year, and there's almost like a case of, I mean, maybe this year we'll just let LeBron win it, but I hope Curry wins.
Yeah, for me, I got Joel Embiid. I think I already went into it a lot. I kind of spoiled it, but they've been a completely different team with him off the court, and when he's on the court, they're dominant. And they're the best team in the East right now because of him. And he's the best player on the team. They run the offense through him. He's been good in the post. He's been getting involved, getting his teammates involved. Hasn't been as good at rebounding, but he's been dominant. He's been getting to the line a lot, making his free throws at a more consistent and better rate. So I think he's improved, and he's coming into his own, missing less games, and I think he's MVP at this point. Like Andre said, I mean, LeBron will have a case to win every single year he's played, and he's won multiple MVPs. And I think the NBA might just be like tired of giving him the MVP, so they might just change it up a little bit with either Curry or Embiid.
Yeah, I feel like almost like kind of like to that point where like LeBron can win it every year. I mean, like last year they were pushing like so hard for him to win just because like he should win it almost every year, and he hasn't won one in so long where it's almost just like, all right, he's like deserved it, just like give it to him. It's like so this year I could see it happening. I mean, he just keeps getting older and older, and the case kind of like becomes almost better for him, especially with like some of the shots he's been hitting this season. But
Yeah,
I hope someone like yeah like Embiid or someone different kind of wins. Like seeing Giannis go back to
yeah,
back was like really boring, and I just hope they switch it up. Even
yeah,
Curry, who's already won two. Um,
yeah.
so moving on to the Jazz, who we kind of hinted at a little earlier, who've been having a crazy start to the season. Um, so the discussion really is like, do we think the Jazz can be uh, a championship contending team, and if they're like a real threat to the Lakers in the West? Um, I think they're going to be like a solid regular season team. They remind me a lot of that 2015 Hawks team that went like 16-22. And they had like a bunch of like just solid starters, but like not a lot of star power. I think that's the one thing that kind of separates them is that they do have Donovan Mitchell at the leading that squad, but I just don't see how they compete with the Lakers at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, they got a lot of good pieces there. They got Bogdanovich. They have Connolly, who's actually shown a lot of improvement from last year. I mean, he was terrible last year, and he's on a big contract. And they trade a lot to get him. So it's really they should be really happy that he's playing well at that point guard position. And then they got Rudy Gobert, who they just paid. They have Donovan Mitchell, who they just paid. They've been better. I mean. Gobert, he's shown some weaknesses against certain matchups this year, but he's never going to be a good offensive guy. But you can always count on him for his defense. Donovan Mitchell, he's a great scorer, and you got Bogdanovich, who can shoot the three well. You got Joe Ingles, who's a good 3-and-D player. So that team is just really complete, I guess, as of right now. I don't know if they have the superstars to get them over the edge. Like the Lakers, they have LeBron and AD, who are better than any of the players on that team by far. So I think when it comes to playoff time, I think they're not going to have the Pistons to beat. They're not going to have the Timberwolves to beat all the time. They're going to have to beat some better teams, and they're going to beat some better players and have to lock those guys up. And if Gobert can hit the center out of the games, but unfortunately for them, I think AD and LeBron, they're not really going to. I mean, they don't really have anyone to guard LeBron. And I think what's just going to end up happening is that they're probably going to win the first round. They're going to get a weaker opponent because they're going to be the 1 seed, and then they're going to probably lose in the second round or third round to just a better team, more superstars.
Yeah, I can see a team like even the Clippers, who I feel are pretty like underrated this season, the way that Paul George and Kawhi have been playing. Like even that team is like that's more star power than the Jazz. I
Yep.
think the Jazz are probably a second round out, or maybe uh get out in the conference finals, just kind of depending on uh the path that they have to the finals. But I just don't think this team's really ready for winning a championship.
Yeah, definitely not.
Um, so we are pretty far through the season. I think a little under halfway, because it's only a 72 game season this year. So we'll both give our like favorite storyline of the season so far. I think for me personally, it's the Charlotte Hornets. The way that those guys have been playing, Terry Rozier, LaMelo Ball, Miles Bridges, just all those highlights that we've seen of LaMelo Ball throwing up lobs to Bridges, or Terry Rozier going off for 40 and dunking on KD. And I mean, like even the Charlotte Hornets announcer, I mean, him alone, I mean, he gets me hyped. I mean, that's got to be the best announcer in the league. He's
Yeah.
electric. And I think just overall as a team, they're like just super fun to watch. They're a young team in playoff contention too. Everything there's like nothing really to not like about the Hornets and what they've got going on. And I feel like part of uh, them just being so popular like this year is just LaMelo Ball. So who knows? Maybe that Hornets announcer's been there forever, but just because of LaMelo Ball, he's been getting all the attention now, and
Yeah.
that's definitely like my or one of my favorite teams to watch so far this year.
Definitely a fun team to watch. And for me, I guess I would have the Nets. They just made that trade for Harden. They have a big three, but behind that, aside from Spencer Dinwiddie, I guess they got nothing really. It's very polarizing because they haven't been as good as we thought. They haven't been really dominant. They haven't been able to. They've been horrible on defense. DeAndre Jordan has been bad at center. Um, so yeah, they have not been as good as we thought they were going to be after making those that big trade for Harden. But I think I don't know what when playoff time comes around. I think they'll have stuff figured out. I think they're kind of just coasting right now. But it's really just polarizing because they just it's just three like I don't know. I want to say probably top 20 players in the league. I think Kyrie's probably the worst of the three right now. But it's like reminiscent of the super team in Golden State I guess with just three good players and then kind of meh depth beyond them. But yeah, they're a really polarizing team. I'm interested to see how they do in the playoffs. But yeah, they've still been fun to watch and ever since the Harden trade. But yeah, they'd have to be my most polarizing team so far.
Yeah, I think Harden even said it best. Like I don't. I mean, you said it's pretty hard seeing any other team beating the Nets in 4 games or like 4 times
Yeah,
in 7 game series. They just have so much star power, and I think even James Harden just falling into that point guard role and um, kind of like that third scoring option, which everyone thought Kyrie would fall into, and that would cause a problem. I think Harden's done a really good job of kind of just like I'll get out of the way and just try and make this work out. And that team's just going to be more and more fun to watch as they start to put everything together.
yeah, most certainly.
All right. So moving on, we've got our depressing stat of the day. I got sent this on Instagram today. Blake Griffin is tied for the least amount of dunks in the NBA since December of 2019. Um, Blake Griffin has 0 dunks since then. Rudy Gobert leads the league with 267. Uh, Blake Griffin only has dunked the ball 41 times in the past 3 years in NBA games. Um, Let me just talk about a crazy fall off. Blake Griffin obviously came into the league as a rookie and just throwing down highlight reel dunks after highlight reel dunks. Big part of Lob City, and just like the way injuries have kind of taken away his like bounce and just like made him completely change his game from being like a high flyer to now just shooting a bunch of threes and just having terrible rebounding numbers, and he's like averaging like 13 points per game now. I think just like
Yeah,
fell off is just so tough to watch. And like you look at what he is right now and what he's making. I mean, he is like borderline like untradeable. I don't know who's trying to pay Blake Griffin $30 million for what you're getting out of him right now.
yeah. He's gotten so many injuries at this point. I think they're just kind of starting to take their toll on his body, and I think he's just kind of be more like gun shy, I guess, for the dunking and getting physical there because he knows he's probably going to get injured eventually if he keeps doing that. So he's resulted to be more of a perimeter player, which is not his game, not his strength. So it might be looking at the time where maybe he should probably consider retirement. I mean, he's a little young to retire, but I think maybe what's best for him is maybe if he wants to maybe get bought out and try and give it one last go at things, maybe not being the focal point of the offense of a better team. Or he could retire and just take home all of his career earnings and stuff and just go home with his head up high and just try and keep his body safe from maybe any permanent injuries or whatever stuff that he will live with it for the rest of his life. Because I think if he were to retire now, he could live a great life and he could never have to work a day of his life. But right now, he's not it right now, and I think he knows it. And I think he knows how bad he's been playing, and I think he's probably itching for a change of scenery. But with that contract, I don't know how likely that is. Without maybe adding sweeteners and stuff to get him to take it. But I don't think the Pistons really want to do that right now when they're rebuilding. They don't want to be trading draft picks away with him. So I think that the most likely option is probably a buyout of his contract.
Yeah, I think the Pistons and him both agreed for him just to sit out until they know what they're gonna do with him. Um, and I mean, even like coming into the season, you heard his name, John Wall's name, and like Kevin Durant's name. Like, oh, they're all coming back from like big injuries, and you hear like Gilbert Arenas playing with like John Wall and being like, he's looking great, and KD's looking great, and those guys both panned out, but Blake Griffin just has not at all, and
Yeah, not at all.
I mean, nobody would be able to like look at like Blake Griffin in like 2011 and project what his career is now. But I mean, that's just just what injuries do, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, it's unfortunate for him, but I think he's made a lot of money in his career and he's had a lot of success. Obviously, no ring yet, but I think he has the opportunity to go to maybe a team like the Nets and maybe just be the fifth option or fourth option there for that team. And I think that suit him a lot better than being the first option, especially injury wise. They can just lob it up to him and stuff and make special plays designed to get him involved rather than him just having to do everything basically for the Pistons,
Yep.
which you
Well,
can't do it right now.
yeah. So that's gonna wrap up this episode. Like the video, definitely share it around. Um, looking at have some guests on soon, so
For
definitely
sure.
let us know if you want to come on the pod. Um, yeah, with that being said, that's that for this episode. All right, so thanks for watching, guys.